Hey there guys, before we get into today's review, I wanted to take a second to make sure that all of you are subscribed. To those of you that already are, thank you so much, that really means a lot. If you're not yet subscribed, click this button right here, super simple. This is a great way to make sure that you get our latest reviews, our latest video diaries and experiences while we're out there having our own adventures. Once you're subscribed, if you think you know somebody else who might like our channel, then definitely send them this link also, or click one of the share buttons down below. Thanks so much guys, and now on to the review. Hey there guys, my name is Brandon from Gearist.com. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Mutant trail running shoe from La Sportiva. According to the La Sportiva website, which you can visit at sportiva.com, La Sportiva doesn't actually make trail running shoes. What they make are mountain running shoes. Now I'll comment on this a few more times in this review because I think it actually is important to this kind of category. But I would like to say that this shoe, while it is certainly appropriate for running up some pretty gnarly mountains, technical trails and the like, is also a shoe that can be kind of like a Swiss Army knife. This shoe can handle some buffed out trails. It can also handle fire roads. This is going to be great on technical trail, loose terrain, ascents, descents, you name it. It's going to be able to handle it really well. But enough about all that marketing stuff. Let's get into the technical specs of this shoe. First off, the outsole, which you can see right there. This is actually made from the stickiest rubber that La Sportiva makes for their climbing shoes, which they're very well known for. That's their Frixion XF rubber. It's a full contact outsole, which you can see there, no cutaway in the arch, and the lugs are arranged using La Sportiva's impact brake system. Now what does that mean? A lot of trail shoes have their lugs oriented directionally, which means that when you're going up, the lugs in the front of the shoe are oriented to make you, kind of have traction going up the hill, and then the rear foot is meant to have some traction as you come down in case you're landing on that heel to kind of slow yourself down. The impact brake system in La Sportiva means that they're using the combination of the directionality of the lugs combined with the weight of your body as it comes down on it to really decrease the amount of effort that it requires to stop. The lugs themselves are 6 millimeters deep, so nice and deep, and you can actually also see right here in the forefoot, and then again there's a small section here in the rear foot that has kind of like a little bit of, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that, a little bit of a ring around it. And what that is for is that this shoe is made to be compatible with La Sportiva's hobnails. Their hobnail system is a set of carbide spikes that can go right into the shoe in those places to account for ice running. Now, I've commented on this before in other reviews in the past, but no matter what shoe you're in, you're not going to be able to handle ice unless it's got some sort of a spike like that. These are spikes made by La Sportiva for their shoes, and this shoe is set up to receive those for wintertime running. Not necessarily in snow, but when you get onto that really slippery and kind of mixed media ice type stuff. Now again, back to that marketing thing. Classifying this as a mountain running shoe kind of belies a little bit of what it's capable of. I've had this on wet rocks, even some wet sticks, wet grass. I've had it on dry terrain, all in between there, definitely very rocky stuff, and some buffed out trails. And no matter what I'm running on, it handles it really well. These deep lugs, the agility of the shoe, which we're going to talk about with the different parts of the shoe, are all really complementary to making it really stick. Now with those longer lugs, one of the things that I'm concerned with when I see that in some shoes is the durability of those lugs, because they hang out there, they're more likely to get cut on things and burn down a little bit quicker than you might like. However, I have noticed in the 40 miles that I've got on the shoe, right about 40 miles that I've got on the shoe, there's not really significant wear to speak of. Sure, there are a couple little nicks where you can see that some sharper rocks or whatever it was caught the thing and maybe chipped off a little bit, but again, it's got 40 miles. With this kind of wear, I wouldn't hesitate to think this could get several hundred miles, obviously depending on the gait, the type of terrain that you're running. Now, I'd like to make a really quick comment. Somebody asked us a while ago how we can make a call on the durability, or at least how we can get an opinion formed of a shoe inside of 40 miles, because we try to go between 30 and 40 miles in any shoe before we review it. The short answer to that is, just like when you go to your job, whatever that is, you begin to get a sense of exactly how things work, and your sixth sense to know where things are and how things are operating, and begin to kind of extrapolate that data out over a longer period of time becomes more acute. In our case, at any given time, we've got 15 pairs of shoes in our testing rotation, and that's usually just me. That's not counting our other testers as well. And so what happens in that situation, for expediency's sake, and so that we don't get out one review a year, we can't put 500 miles on the shoe. What we have to do is take our knowledge of the footwear industry and footwear construction and take that, break it down, and really let you guys know what we think. and as far as durability goes, how long we think something is going to be able to last. Now that we've talked about that, let's get into the midsole of this shoe, which you can see right here. Now, typically speaking, I like to see a shoe that's got 6mm drop and under, but that's not always going to be the case. We're not going to be able to pick and choose what we review necessarily because we want to make sure you guys have a breadth of knowledge and exposure to different products. So in this guy, it's got a 26mm stack height in the heel and a 16mm stack height in the forefoot for a net drop of 10mm. Now, I've said this before, but on trail shoes, I don't feel like drop is necessarily as important as it is on road shoes. Largely the reason for that is because when you're on trails, especially technical things or ascents, you're going to really be engaging mostly the front of the shoe. And that's certainly the case with this. I didn't notice it having necessarily some overly stacked feeling or over drop feeling. This felt really just nice and fine in terms of the drop height, so I wasn't worried about that. Now, the material of the midsole is a single density injection molded EVA. That's all the black that you see right around here and this little bit of red right here. There is no rock plate in this shoe. I have to say that I did not notice this being an issue, even on some really rocky stuff, some loose stuff where I would expect things to be kind of jabbing up into my foot. It was not an issue for me. I didn't notice anything that stood out to me. I think that's partially because this EVA foam that is here is firm. Yes, it provides cushioning, but it's still firm, which I like. That's going to give you a little bit of protection from the ground, but also these 6mm lugs in the outsole I mentioned a second ago, those are going to kind of create another kind of buffer between you and those rocks. At the rear of the shoe, you can see this blue thing right here. That is La Sportiva's stabilizer. It starts here at the back side of the lateral arch, wraps all the way around. You can't see it, but it's under here, wraps all the way around and right to the back side of the medial arch. Now, that we're going to talk a little bit more about in the upper, but it's going to provide a nice amount of rear foot stability, basically keeping you, if you start to roll an ankle or something, this is going to keep that shoe really attached to your foot. And this is something that's pervasive throughout the upper, and we'll get into that in a minute. The midsole itself is very interesting in that it comes up very high on the side of the shoe. Now, it looks like your foot would probably sit about here, but it doesn't. This is probably, your foot probably sits right about there. So almost a ½ inch below where the midsole comes up over the shoe. Like for instance, if I put my finger in, it's sitting right about there. So there's a lot of kind of cup in the rear, especially of this shoe, but it even goes up into the forefoot a little bit. This is going to do a great job with really defining that heel cup in the rear of the shoe, which I'll talk about in the ride section because it really helps to define the agility of the shoe and complements all the different types of technical terrain that you may encounter. Although it's not the greatest around, ground feel was actually quite good in this shoe, and again, I didn't really notice a lack of rock plate. Now let's move on to the upper of this bad boy, which is probably the coolest part of the shoe in my opinion. First up is the air mesh that La Sportiva uses here. Nice and breathable. It is not waterproof by any stretch. It actually drains well because it comes right down to the midsole there, so the forefoot area of draining is not really nice. It's not going to drain so well through the rear foot because, as I said again, that midsole comes up over the top of it. Now, apart from that mesh, you've got these strings that you can see here. This is part of La Sportiva's Fusiongate system. These structural laces serve several purposes. Number one, you can see that they form the gillies over here. They're not really traditional eyelets like you might see on some shoes. These are where a gilly is where the lace goes through like a kind of wound over mesh part of something. In this case, they're really holding that in, keeping the laces nice and tight. We're going to talk about the laces a little more in a second when we talk about the tongue, but they also then wind down. You'll see them kind of go and disappear under into the midsole and then reappear on the other side. What this is doing is it's holding the whole foot. So when you're tightening down on these, you're tightening around the foot. These are secured by this. You can see maybe there's some clear TPU overlay right there. That is bonded to the shoe, and that's what holds those in place. Now, this red one that you see up here at the top actually even goes around into the rear of the shoe, helping to more define that heel cup, which is really a hallmark of this. I think this is a really interesting and very durable alternative to either stitched on overlays or bonded overlays, which are the kind of pervasive thing these days. Yes, there are bonding aspects going on with it, but these are going to reinforce that much more and keep it that much more strong. Now, the tongue on the upper is one of the coolest parts of this, absolutely. First, it's got this burrito kind of construction, which you can see here is a single piece that comes up from the medial side and wraps around. It's actually not a single piece. There's a little bit of stitching right there, but the feel is of a single piece. It wraps around right there, like you can see, so it really, really hugs the foot. And when complemented by this lacing system, system that, that we just talked about, the Fusiongate, it really allows it to just wrap down on the foot and hold it very tightly. In fact, if you come home from a run and you try to kick your shoes off, good luck, because I can tell you that if you're tied down, depending on how tightly and all that stuff and how it's tied, you're not going to be able to kick this off very easily. I mean, it's very difficult. So the moral of that is untie your shoes. In addition to that burrito tongue, one of the cool parts is the laces. That's right, the laces. Now, the laces themselves are traditionally just nylon, a little tiny bit of stretch, and they're round laces, not lay flat or anything like that. But what they've got going on, as you can see here, I'll open it up for you, is that the lace actually goes into the tongue on the underside. And what happens is when you tighten actually the outside lace, when you tighten that, it really even pulls the burrito and kind of wraps it that much more. This is all in an effort to really hold the foot, which is something that is kind of needed because this is not the lightest shoe in the world. A size 9 in this comes in at 10.7 ounces. Not light, but because it's really on the foot and it's held to the foot and cradled and kind of hugging the foot like that, you really feel as though it's part of your foot. It's not like this weight hanging off the bottom of your leg. So it's a really good feel no matter the weight. One other thing that this provides for those laces is this little guy right here, which is a lace pocket. This is basically, once you've got your shoes tied, you can shove those in there, and I can show you on this shoe here that you can shove those laces in there. It keeps them nice and out of the way. It keeps them from banging or kind of flapping around while you're running. Rounding out the upper, first of all, is this amazing toe bumper. This is like a heavy gauge rubber. I mean, it is durable. I have kicked all kinds of stuff with this, and you just never feel it. Your foot kind of bounces off. And then we've got that stabilizer aspect, which I talked about a second ago. That again is going to cup that heel, and it's really going to make a well-formed heel cup. And speaking of the heel, this is a super rigid heel counter, especially as you get down lower in the shoe. Again, going toward keeping that foot from moving around inside the shoe. That combined with the burrito and construction keeps it really still and just very stable inside the shoe. One thing I should point out is that the collar is very high. There's not a ton of padding, but it's actually very comfortable. The thing about it being high is that if you're used to lower shoes, which most are going to have lower collars than this, you may want to wear a higher sock. It really depends on the person, depends on what you think. But if you're walking around in it and you feel like it's sitting a little bit high on your ankle, definitely get something that's got a little bit more height in that sock so that you're not finding any chafing. I didn't find any, it didn't bother me because again, there is soft fabric back there, but for some they might want to try that out. And now let's talk about the fit of the La Sportiva Mutant. First of all, and I'll say this is a blanket statement about all La Sportiva running shoes, trail running shoes, or mountain running shoes as they say, go up by at least a half size. Now, in the past, I have gotten 11s and kind of dealt with it, but this, I got the 11 and I was like, you know what? This time we need to go 11 and a half because I know exactly how this is going to fit me. I did get the 11 and a half, fits me like a dream. So definitely go up by at least a half a size. You know, much of the fit of this shoe is going to be based on how you lace it, how much you tighten it down and all that. The reason is because the lacing is integral to the fit of the upper. I personally feel like this heel cup, basically from the front of this stabilizer thing back, is an amazing fit. I think that even a low volume foot would fit pretty well in there because again, you can compensate for that by tightening down a lot. I think that the midsole fit, or the midfoot fit, as it were, is actually really nice as well. It does a good job, and I don't know how much it would deal with a wide foot, but it's certainly worth a try because just as there's play for it to wrap this way, there's play for it to unwrap this way and allow for a wider foot. Moving into the toe box, awesome toe box. I really like it a lot. Tons of room through here. I even thought there was plenty of room up here, so really, really kudos to La Sportiva on that toe box. Now for the ride, I have to tell you that I have taken this on every kind of terrain. Again, rocky, muddy, wet, dry, technical, like loose stuff, descents, ascents, really, really just buffed out trails as well. And it's performed well across all those, which is why I think calling it a mountain running shoe is not necessarily fair and is probably going to cut off a bit of the audience. So I will go ahead and say that this is a trail running shoe, and any trail that you're going to be able to go on is going to be something where this is probably going to handle quite well. In terms of the agility, as I mentioned before, this fit of the upper and its ability to really hold your foot is going to enhance your ability to hop from rock to rock and stuff like that. I felt really confident no matter the terrain that I was on, and it just did a really solid job of keeping me in touch with the shoe and in touch with the ground and knowing where I was. So I really love the ride of this. It does a good job. It again doesn't have the greatest ground feel in the world, and that rear foot stiffness is a little bit much, but The forefoot flexibility is really quite good. It's just back here, it doesn't flex quite that much. Not a huge deal, and because there's a little bit of rocker almost through here, the transition is really, really quick from the rear foot to the midfoot to the forefoot, depending on where you land, of course. Now, the La Sportiva Mutant comes in at $130, which is not cheap. Certainly not the most expensive thing out there, but you gotta consider what this can do. If you're somebody who's looking for a one quiver shoe that you can go out, run on those buffed out trails, also run on technical stuff, also run on mountains, as it were, this is a really good option. And for something that is multi-purpose, is that Swiss Army that I mentioned earlier, this is probably not a bad price at $130, and I actually think we may have found it cheaper if you check the buy links down in our description. I've said it a couple times, and I take a second to say it again, that calling this a mountain running shoe is going to scare some people off, but I don't think that you should be. This is an overall trail running shoe if you want it to be, or it can just be your dedicated hardcore stuff shoe. In any event, this is another really great and solid shoe from La Sportiva. My question for you guys today is, when you're looking for a trail shoe, do you look for that one shoe, Swiss Army knife shoe? Or do you like to go more specific? I want this shoe for technical, this shoe for buffed out, this shoe for whatever. Let us know in the comment section down below. Now guys, if you've got any questions about this review or any of our reviews, please don't hesitate to ask. You can do so by emailing info@gearist.com or swing on over to any of our social media outlets, which you can see right here on my right, your left. Also, don't forget to visit Gearist.com, where you can look at all of our reviews as well as some features that aren't on the YouTube channel. As I mentioned at the outset, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, which you can do so by clicking that YouTube button right over there. It doesn't cost you anything. It just pops up a little subscription and you're done. Thank you guys so much for taking a few minutes to spend with us today, and we'll see you next time.